Hello.
Hello, Glenn.
Hi. How are you?
I'm running on a treadmill, man.
What's happening?
I just felt like talking to somebody who understands.
I just got off the phone with a guy who asked me the same questions about Alan Watts as people have asked for 3 years. I felt like saying, have you been in the bush?
Yeah, actually, I guess when people get out of that realm, they have those same questions.
Anyways,
that's
life.
Yeah, it's life. Yeah. I wonder what they probably, I don't know, you think his superiors tell him like he'll
I have no idea how he operates. All I got the sense of when I was speaking to him was that most of his audience seemed to have a religious bent.
Well, he's, religious in his own right. He calls it spirituality.
Just like gin,
eh? Yeah.
Scotch, rye.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Speaking of gin, that's one of the in that book, The Pilgrim's Progress. One of the things that the person had on their journey, they were given a bottle of spirits to use, and I was like, what? That's
Well, it comes with a label. Grey Goose vodka.
Oh yeah.
The best vodka in the world, they say daily on television.
Yeah.
I don't know how you prove that.
They just tell you and you believe it.
Yeah. Why not? Everybody else does.
That's why I was looking. I was in the gym and I was on this thing. It's like they call it the elliptical, where you move, but it's not. It's like instead of like running on a treadmill, you move your arms and your legs. And I glanced over at the TV and I just see like a number. I just think in my head, I was like, well, they just put a number every day, and people either like really respect the number or they frown when they see a certain number. It's like it's just a new. I was just thinking in my head, like it's just a new number they put in their head every day. So, I think it's just interesting when as you analyze the system more and more. It's just like a big joke.
Yeah.
I don't know how I keep. I don't know how I keep from. I don't know how do you keep from flipping out or just losing it.
I guess it's experience learned from life.
Yeah.
That first times things happen to you, you kind of react. The second time they happen, you react in slow motion. And the third time you don't react. You just wonder if people will ever learn.
Yeah, you know what it was? Like I was at work and I was just so tired of people saying, "Oh, just stay happy, be happy."
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, man, what you see, man? It's just people who are 70 years old, 60 years saying this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really gets me, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's how powerful programming can be.
Yeah.
Just like walk off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Happily. Yeah. So yeah, I was talking to another guy about we were just talking about like wee men and stuff, and he said something really interesting. it's something that I actually seen in a movie. It's a movie. I'll probably mail it to you when I send you some. In the movie, they call it. It's a movie called Beowulf. It's like like Scandinavian, like Vikings, so Vikings, so environment. And in the movie, he has to go fight this demon lady. It's the whole movie's like this whole esoteric thing, but in the movie he has to, because it's like there's this demon lady or a demon living in a cave, and she has like a child demon, and this Viking comes over to kill it, to slay the demon, but he finds out that the child of the demon lady was actually a child of the king, because the king had I guess sex with the demon lady. But really it was all showing how like it was allegorically showing like this wee man, because she lured this guy into her cave, and I guess they had sex or whatever, and she made a child. But they made an agreement, and they used this horn. Like, and I thought about the horn that you mentioned in Zulu, and I was reading about like the horn. They call it the horn of plenty, or cornucopia. And this is all like communications, or this thing, or is it just communications, or there's something more to the horn? Or is it like
the horn of plenty?
Because these are all analogous with each other. The horn, the horn of plenty, the Zulu horn that you think. Like, what are they talking about? The phone? Tell us, or
well, I don't know, because they use it in a lot of contexts.
Yeah.
So the concept that you have more than you need is basically the imagery that I get.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But yeah, in that movie, the allegory that this guy was saying was how like the wee man, like they lure you in, and then once you're in, they leave you.
Lead you?
Yeah, like they what happened?
Eh?
What'd you say? I didn't hear you.
I said lead you, L-E-A-D.
Yeah, like they lure you in.
Yeah.
And when you're in the cave with them, then it's like you're in a position like they could just leave you where you stand.
Sounds like a nunnery.
Yeah.
Get married to Jesus once you're in.
Yeah.
Hey, I left the world not to be married to Jesus. I end up as a nun. And then the first thing they want to do is turn you into a wife again.
Yeah.
That's the feeling I get that women must feel when they've been suckered.
Yeah.
You know, why would they call their vow their last vow, unless there were many other vows before? So in other words, it's like Freemasonry. You make vows without the whole body of information. Yeah. And you have to wait until you've climbed the pyramid almost to the top before they tell you this true story about
but nobody like most people in their lifetime don't climb that pyramid. Yeah. I think most people, I think how like in Freemasonry, I think it's, say a guy's a Mason, I think it's the one who climbs up higher is the child of the Mason. Like it's like a genetic.
Yeah, you have to be third generation before you are considered basically
worthy stock.
Free of sin. Or the possibility of sin. Yeah. That would be talking.
Yeah.
Talking about what you know.
Oh, so the nunneries, that's how they bring, these new
novices, they call them.
Novices.
No vice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And they became president without being vice president.
But they say, like, I see, like, those monkish groups, like, I think they call them the Franciscans or the Augustinians, and you don't have to be a nun. From what I saw on the internet, you can be like a regular married couple and be part of it.
Depends on which group you're involved with. Some of them allow marriage, different set of rules.
So those people can just adopt a baby, supposedly.
Well, it would be helpful to a community that manufactures babies to have an avenue of distribution out there.
Yeah.
So if they have people who are part of the community and are married, they can then adopt the children, or they can take them as foster children and raise them in the community. That would be one way to serve the community. When you say serve the community, that's not really true. What nuns do is serve the Mother Superior. Because in the end, she's the one who makes all the decisions.
At least they serve their community.
Yeah. Their community via the word of the Mother Superior.
That's the thing about this whole problem. It's just the languaging is a really big thing, Glenn. Like, I'm just seeing, like...
Think of it like a big toilet. Mother Superior is like Lake Superior. It holds the water and flushes when it wants to.
This is what Super Rio.
Superman is Mother Superior. Because we know that their perfect slave looks like a woman on the outside, but is in fact a man hiding on the inside, dominated by a Neanderthaler who is getting instructions from a computer at head office. So it's still basically the will of a Superman, an Ubermensch, a person in the form of a computer made up from many persons.
Yeah. Now, when I think of the Neanderthals, I just think of it as some guy who just knows my deepest secrets, who's just been watching me my whole life, watching everything I do. And I got to be careful with my emotions because he has control over all of that.
What you need to grasp is a concept that all of the people you speak to every day of your life are not different people. They are all the same person under different guises. That every question you are asked is being asked of you by the same person through a different channel that it controls. Because there's no such thing as a free person until they grasp how the system functions. And when they grasp how the system functions, they grasp that concept that everything that comes to you is coming to you, good or evil, from the same person. The symbolism of the pyramid, you start with 4 sides at the bottom and big ladder up each side, diminishing. But in the end,
it goes to one.
Goes to one.
And that's interesting. That leads you to like masonry or whatever they call it, the monad.
Yeah, flip it over and have your pyramid go down instead of up. The whole concept of going up is basically getting you away from where truth lies, which is down below. Be an owl is the word below.
But there's truth above. We can't see it.
Well,
really
when they're talking about above, they're talking about having built a plan benchmarked by the things you see in space. Planets, the comets, the sun, all of those things are basically their way of communicating to the initiated where they are on a plan. But in fact, they're causing them to look up when the power is below.
Whenever I see those pictures of the guy pointing up and down, I always think about the person who's actually doing the pointing up and down. Because he's the media. He's the one.
Yeah, he's the one who tells you, look, 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 look.
Yeah.
And while you're looking, he's dipping into your back pocket and stealing your wallet.
So it goes to the one. That whole thing, how we're all one, I used to think it was just a New Age doctrine. Or then I learned they were talking about, all the female, male parts, everything into the one. But there's another reality, and they're talking about that singularity in nature, because as soon as you start believing that there is there's a good and a bad, or just two or something, then they could just make you believe there's three and there's four, and that's what they did with religion. Because in religion, they believe it's all Buddhism, but really they're all one. It's all one religion in reality.
Well, you got to think of the singularity basically as a sphere, as a ball. And then a shape charge goes off, and what you have is an expansion that takes place. An expansion automatically suggests that the things that you've seen in 3 dimensions has a 4th dimension.
No.
Because the 4th dimension is how far away you are from the singularity. And that relates to the time from the big explosion. How far you have moved, each ring being, say, a second or a minute or an hour or a day or a month or a year, each ring is suggesting that the basic unit of stuff you're dealing with is the same. The difference is you are farther away from the singularity. And therefore, the diameter of the space you're living in is bigger and bigger. Until, of course, a decision has to be made by creation on whether or not to allow the expansion to continue. In time, if you allow the expansion to continue, you are destroying everything that's there. Because in any system, which relates to the word stem, as in stem cell, anything that gets further and further away from the other parts in the system is basically losing its contact, losing its gravity, losing its attraction, and allowed to continue past a certain point, there is no longer a system. There are only parts by themselves flying around. And if, say, the Earth was far enough from the sun that the sun could have no effect on it, then it dies. Cannot act as an Earth because it requires water and heat and all of the things that come from being in orbit around the sun. So at that point of transition, which I suggest we're at now, creation must make a decision. And that decision basically is, okay, everything I put in the singularity has been expanded to its maximum without destruction taking place. If I allow it to go further, it will destroy itself. And therefore, should I, in fact, reverse the process and with each ring of time passing, begin to decrease the space between the parts, in the end, what will happen is a return to the concept of the singularity through a process they call the Big Crunch.
That almost sounds like a reverse.
Well, that's what happens in a fruit tree. You basically create a tree from a seed. But the end product of the tree is a fruit that brings a new seed that starts the process all over again.
And that, what's in that seed, is that like instructions? It
is the seed that was planted in the ground, plus the lessons learned from the time the seed expanded into a plant, turned into a tree, grew and made leaves and fruit that made another seed. So the seed that you get from a tree is an improved version. Now, the word improved is a little stretched here because if you have, for example, the best corn of all growing in the world, say, would grow in Iowa, and you take the seeds of corn from Iowa and you bring them to northern Ontario, you will plant that seed in the ground, and it will not give you the quality that you get in Iowa, because the quality of the final product is not solely the product of what was in the seed, but it's also the product of the environment the seed is now living in. The environment in northern Ontario being windier or colder or shorter growing season or what have you is going to be different than the one in Iowa. However, if what you do instead of growing the plant in northern Ontario for the purpose of eating the corn or whatever, you grow it as a seed farm, then you have taken the best of Iowa, you put it in the ground in northern Ontario, And from what grows, you take the best there is and put them back in the ground. And those things will give you a second version of growth, which you can take the best of and put back in the ground. And finally, at one stage of the game, what was a great seed in Iowa becomes a great seed in northern Ontario, adapted to the conditions of northern Ontario. Mm-hmm. So it's a process. In life, it's the same thing. You have the birth of a child. It lives its life. It dies. Mm-hmm. If its DNA is reincarnated, reconstituted, mm-hmm. it lives a second time. It receives a different social engineering because it's moved up in time from where it was the first time, and therefore the lessons are different.
What would you say the difference is when that's done by creation and when it's done by artificially by man, like Neanderthal?
Well, the job that creation was attempting to do is similar in many ways to what Creator has done. And that's reincarnating human beings mm-hmm. so that they can grow a second or a third time. The difference is mm-hmm. the timing. Mm. Everything in the world requires a very specific period of learning before the process of dying, putrefying, and reconstituting itself, reincarnating itself begins. What the Creator has done is hijack the process and put things back in motion out of timing. You know, even if you ask a comedian, what's the most important part in telling a joke?
Timing.
It's always timing.
Yeah.
It's not the words, it's not the deed, it's not the action, mm-hmm. but it's the timing that has to be perfect for it to be funny to other people. Or, you know, any other artist can have their art looked upon as useless if it arrives in a time that is not ready for that art.
Yeah.
So creation is the only place that has the schedule, the timing, and therefore creation must be allowed to choose when it is time, say for a hermaphrodite to give birth to genders as opposed to a clone of itself. Not somebody else imposing a new schedule. Yeah. Because that schedule will always be out of time. If the root's out of time, then the entire tree is out of time. And what if a tree began to start growing in midwinter instead of spring?
Yeah, exactly.
The effect of the weather on it would basically make sure that its life is shortened.
Yeah, it's because, you know, the soil goes to sleep.
Yeah. So the key word in all of this, Jared, is timing.
So do you think that computer, the Neanderthal, you think what do you think their concept of time is, how they look at time as opposed?
Well, it looks at time as on a self-serving schedule.
It's like that bunny rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. It's always like, oh, I'm late, guys.
Yeah.
That's what they were talking about.
Well, you see, the major controlling interest in North America is AOL Time Warner. That's the basic control mechanism. AOL is linked to Polaris. It's basically telling you the Northern Star is the period in which they are functioning. Time is their time. They give you a clock and a watch and tell you to show up and all of this, instead of how nature dealt with things during the time of the original clan mothers, where you worked when the weather suggested it was the time to work. You worked the hours that the sun suggested you work. You didn't force yourself to work under conditions that nature was indicating to you was not right, like it's raining or snowing or freezing or what have you. All of these things that nature had determined as indications of timing were basically thrown aside by somebody who said, I want your product and I want it now. Therefore, here's a watch, learn how to work like a robot and produce when I tell you, not when it's the right time. There's a story about Native people in northern Ontario who were hired to build the railroad for supervisors who were Caucasian. And 5 o'clock would come and the bosses would say, okay, time for everybody to go home. And the Native people would look at each other and say, what's he talking about? It's not going to be dark for another hour.
They went by how the sun rose.
They went by nature's time, not some artificial time.
And that's why, like, when you look at that's why they call themselves the masters of time. But now, like, after analyzing all this stuff, before I didn't believe in destiny. Now I believe in destiny because they create the total artificial environment, and it's like the fates. They can just control everybody's destiny, and
you're all out of step. The whole world is out of step, and you keep running into each other, and that's where you get wars and famines and pestilence and disease because everything's out of step. Creation made a self-cleansing planet we call Earth. On that planet are human bodies, all made to be self-cleansing, self-fixing. However, they can't be self-cleansing or self-fixing if they're working to the rules of a medical industry who wants to sell pills.
Oh, so they gotta make these diseases, like in nature, like diseases would be were they diseases, you think, at one time, or was just natural?
Well, whatever illnesses came, there were natural solutions to it, and it wouldn't basically become pandemic and passed on from one person to the other. It would be repaired basically on the spot. But because we're now like seeds that are being sent to a place where they weren't supposed to be, we develop these diseases that become recessive within our own genetics, and we pass it on to our descendants.
That's what I like when I look at people who have like a lot of these diseases, I think what people are missing is that it's not that you're getting them from your environment. Maybe the environment plays a role in setting off something inside yourself. I think it's more like linked to genetics. It's all like instruction. Like
think of it. There's symbolisms out there.
Mm-hmm.
In our world, they want us to get married.
Yeah.
Yet they know that two individuals living with a nail in one foot each, nailing each other together, are in a period of time going to be less than happy with the relationship, and they'd want to expand the relationship, but the rules of marriage will say, no, you can't. Yet, when they want a relationship, they call it elections. And they allow you to throw out half the people that are there and replace them with the other half every 4 or 5 years. Because they know the rules and they are using it to their advantage, but using the same rules, they reverse them when it comes to their individual slaves, so that each of the slaves feel trapped. Whereas when you're in a democracy, you don't feel trapped, although you are anyways, because they rig both sides.
Yeah.
But you don't feel it, and therefore you feel you have freedom that you can throw the bums out.
It's like a Houdini trick.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading that that's like basic propaganda. Like what the government will do, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we want to know what you feel about this law we want to pass and get people's take on it." And everybody, all of the sheep say what
they're doing is
they're just making you feel like you're just involved, but they were going to do what they were going to do in the first place.
Exactly. What they want to do when they're asking you questions is tell you, if you don't agree with us, you're out of step. And then they present the news in a way that makes you feel like the odd man out if you think the way you do. But they control the information, so everybody, maybe 90% of the people out there are thinking like you. But the media is presenting them, the other 10%, as being everybody. When they have a discussion on where do we come from, they put two people. One says, I believe that creation is where we come from, and the other one says, I believe evolution is where we come from. But they don't put the third party on there that says, we were created by creation, hijacked by creator, and now we're all robots. We're all genetically modified and engineered seed that are, in fact, the property of somebody who taxes us, not for our benefit, but for theirs. That's why the IRS is the same word as the word theirs.
Yeah, the IRS lives with me, man, in my neck, man, to my neck. Yeah. It tries to see what I see. Like now, I see like what it does. Cause like a week ago, I just had this overwhelming feeling of depression out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm just like, damn, man, I can't.
That's your medulla talking.
Yeah, man. I'm just like, damn. And I think it's weird. Like when somebody actually knows they have a control mechanism in their neck, how does this thing, does it function differently? Or
once you know what you can do to break its cycle. and you cannot break the cycle in an enclosed room. That's why jails exist. It's to close your space. That's why cloistered monasteries exist. It's to limit your movement. So the key is to work the opposite. When you're feeling that way, that's when you've got to run out.
Yeah.
Get to the bigger spaces. Get to the places where there are no boundaries, whether in a city that's a park, or getting out to the country, or to a farm area, or the mountains, or the sea. Although the sea is a trick, because the sea puts you in a cloistered place in a big place.
The boat.
Yeah, you're in a boat. Your cell is the boat. That's why the captain has so much power, because you can't run away. You can't quit and say, let me off.
That's why, like, when I go, like, it's like a great feeling I get, like, once I step into, like, the woods, and it's just no cell phones, no houses, no people. It's just it's just me and nature, me and creation right there. I'm seeing it happen.
Yeah, find a patch of grass and a big tree, and sit down, lean up against the tree, smell it, feel the wind on your face. All these things are all things that defeat their control mechanisms. And what I do is, we don't have a lake on the farm, but I've put up 5 different tubs, big tubs outside. And when I start to feel that my medulla is starting to create an environment of control and depression will follow, I basically go out and jump in the water.
They don't like to.
Yeah, right over my head. Preferably enough to shock my body a little bit. It's usually colder than the outside around me, and that kind of sends them back into their den, wherever they live in my neck.
Yeah.
And then I can sit down in a field or something, and it kind of goes away.
So I think one of the things that a big solution to this problem is people could just start pointing fingers at nunneries, and it'll just fade out, this piggy in the neck, over time. Because they keep reintroducing it in the public.
The more you are stuck in a city environment, you are a city zen.
Yeah.
You are a thinker based upon rules, as opposed to a thinker based upon reality.
That's what, like, I was talking to somebody, they were like, "Oh, are you really an original thinker?" And then they started bringing up things like, you ever heard of positivism and all these isms? And I'm just like,
positive thinking has a place after you get rid of the negative. But you got to get rid of the negative first in order to allow the positive to take place.
Yeah. So we're city zens if we're living in the city. Yeah, when I break down words, I was looking at a word in Zoroastrianism, they call it the Zen Vesta. That's like the Bible or whatever.
It's your vest.
The Vesta is the purity. It's the Vestal Virgin.
You're walking around in a girdle. That's what a vest is basically to keep everything put together inside. So, let go your vest. get outside, and live a little,
So do you believe that if there's like any original or women with some original DNA inside?
I don't think there's any human being left anywhere close to civilization. Whether or not there are men or women who have retained their original creation is impossible from this place to see. You would have to, first of all, find such survivors, obviously in a jungle or someplace far away from civilization, and then live with them for a while so that you can tell by their actions rather than their words whether or not they are totally escaped from the rules of civilization. The word escape is wrong because it would suggest that they were at one time part of the rules. But if they've been able to maneuver throughout historical times so that they have never been affected by civilization, that would be an interesting thing to record, to watch, and observe, analyze, and conclude.
Well, I've heard there's people who have done that, but there's a lot of them. As soon as you see like a religious type of, they've been affected.
Yeah, well, it's one of the fundamental control mechanisms put forward by the SY stem.
This thing, I think people actually think that like naturally was supposed to be religious, like a natural type of worship or something. And I think that's how people are fooled by
the word
that
would explain what you want to say. They didn't invent.
Yeah.
That's why it's so difficult for us to communicate, because we have to communicate with the words they invented, and they gave the meaning to it. So anytime we speak them, it's their meaning that counts, not ours.
Yeah, that's the thing, Glenn. Lately, I've been having this problem, like with certain, because I can't.
You can't verbalize.
Yeah. I feel like tied down. It's like, damn, man. What do I maybe I just need to learn more languages. Maybe I'll have a little bit more freedom that way.
Well, no, you'd probably have less. What you have to do is learn to speak to yourself, first of all, through imagery in your mind, without attaching words to that imagery. Just visualize the things that you want. And then you will be able to begin the process of communicating between individuals, either directly or through an intermediary such as the CAT provides a local area network, and you will be able to communicate your will to another person who is communicating to you their will, and that way the words don't get in the way.
Yeah.
The words are the problem.
Because, like, when you think about it, a pure, uncorrupted thought, to use the word, I don't know what word to use to explain it, but like a pure electric current or in your neurons, that is shouldn't be any word attached to that. It should be just like awesome. I can't even find a word, man.
Well, one of the things that I went through over my aging process was in the original days of the Hebrew language. The people were given the equivalent of consonants.
Yeah, they have any vowels.
But no vowels.
Yeah, and it was like illegal to even say like God's name or something.
Yeah, and therefore only the teachers, the rabbis, retained the ability to communicate because they had the vowels they could insert. Well, we have the same problem, in any language today. We are communicating with their consonants and vowels, but we don't have the true meaning within that framework of what our will is without using their words, which basically mirror our will and convert it to their will so that they get what they're looking for, and all we do is chatter.
Exactly. That's what I hear when people say things. It's from my perspective, when I hear people talking, it's just somebody else's world, and that's all.
The word chatter, by the way, comes from the word chat or cat in French. So what it's basically saying is that, like I said before, that cats provide a local area network. They are basically simply a transmission and receiving process, but they are not originators of the information.
So with just phones.
So you're just passing their will from one person.
It's like with telephones, with just Oh man.
And even the telephone, we laugh about what it does, but they control it to the point that when they don't want you to hear the other side, they bring in noises and crackle and break up the sound so that you can't even communicate if you're trying to communicate your will as opposed to theirs.
Oh yeah, I've seen that happen numerous times. Me talking to you, they just hang up. With that word that you mentioned, chatter, I've been noticing this in a lot of words that does those letters R-E-T. I looked it up. It's linked to genetics. It's linked to
second version of communications. The T is like a big telephone pole. And R-E means second time around.
And T is a transmission.
So you're just passing stuff that's not yours, that you got from someplace and pass on. That's why they give you all the chat rooms you want on the net.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they seen. They're really good. They're really clever. They say, oh, here, look at all these choices, but it's all one.
Yeah. Look at what we're talking on now in Ontario here. The company is called Bell Canada. Well, if a person got peeved at Bell Canada and said, I'm going to use a different approach, well, then what's the option? You say, I'm not going to use Bell Canada for my ENET. I'll call Shaw Direct. They spell it S-H-A-W. But that doesn't count. What counts is the phonetics. It's Shaw or it's Bell, and that means it's the same thing. They're just a middleman.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. It's like with the races. You got black, white, Asian. They're all the same, really, underneath. But they did that to confuse.
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
Underneath, the only difference is how far away from the equator we lived for thousands of years. The ones who live closer to the equator, their pigmentation got darker. The ones who were moved away from the equator, their pigmentation gets lighter. Genetically, you can induce this to happen faster, but it's a normal process. You're just making it go faster.
And that's the whole thing with their timing.
That's what they did. Their timing is off. Everything that follows is off, and therefore nothing can succeed. Well, we have arrived at that point of decision. I put it to you that we are at that point of transition where creation is saying, okay, what do I do? Do I shut it down? And by shutting it down, it's the contrary to what we've been taught to believe. Shutting it down means returning it to a singularity, going back down to the original shape of the seed. Whereas, do I abandon it? And by abandoning it, it means let it expand as long as it can, but it's not going to be able to do it beyond a certain period of time.
When say creation was to destroy everything, wouldn't it come back tougher as it did before?
When creation allows it to return to seed, to its original singularity, it will have gained all of the experience of having lived again in a totally different social environment. And therefore, the next time it is launched again with another Big Bang, it will be that much tougher. But if it closes the experiment down and says, this one went astray, it got hijacked, so we just let it run its time.
What a shame.
But the idiots who are running it are basically saying, we can fix it by destroying it. So they're not even going to let it run its time. They basically want to induce the end of time.
They can't see that there's a Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, now I hear you.
Oh, I guess that was my bell doing this.
Yeah, you disappeared there. When you said, can't they see? That was the last word.
Yeah.
No, but they can hear.
Yeah. Like, don't they understand, like, there's, like, I guess a natural way of things. I don't want to say law, because that's what they always say.
Yeah.
It's like I guess a law, a natural...
You don't have the word, so don't worry about it.
Is a way things flow, and they're basically making things out of whack. And don't they see that? Doesn't all their years of experimentation and observation?
They are run by a computer.
Yeah.
And a computer runs on the concept of what it has been taught is true.
So it's a program. It's a program.
Yeah, therefore, nobody's gone back to the original program and said, there's a problem here. Everything we've put in since is skewed because there was a problem at the beginning.
But that's common sense, though. That's look at computers, right, that are made. They've gone back and say, oh well, the new version was the original program, and this computer was a little off, so we updated it. They do that and just
That's the problem they have now in that concept of the Big Bang, is they've decided to go back and look, and then they discovered that in the first split second, something happened that they hadn't taken into consideration, that gravity wasn't what it is today, and therefore they are now all confused because everything that they believe can be wrong if they don't grasp what happened in the actual first period in time.
And now when this happens, right, and everything that they believe could be wrong, then this whole debate, well, see, religion will be like, the religious side of the same thing will be like, well, you see, yada, 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 you guys are wrong, you don't know, just leave it up to God. Leave it up to God. But, here's a question. Because humanity, or just life, we've gained enough knowledge now to go into outer space and explore other things. Doesn't that mean once we have that knowledge that, like, we don't just belong, like, on Earth anymore?
Why is it, though, Jared, if we've gained all of this knowledge, that when we go to school, they teach us 3 dimensions, but they don't teach us beyond 3 dimensions? If there's a 4th dimension, there's a 5th. Yeah. And if there's a 5th, there's a 6th. Yeah. And why are we being limited in the knowledge? It's because they want to limit our ability to reason. And what we don't have going along with our intelligence is the concept that reason alone does not give you the answer, that you must access your intuition, which basically was built upon the ancient truths of the past.
And I'm concluding now, Glenn, that right now, at the point I'm at right now in my life, I feel I need to, I think you can help me with this. I need to, like, activate my spine or something. Or there's something I need to do.
It's a process that you cannot do in the environment in which you're living, any more than I could do it in the environment I was living in. Yeah. If I was on a roller coaster type lifestyle, looking for money and love in all the wrong places, I had to stop and get off. Yeah. And then say, okay, wipe the slate clean and don't live that life of the robot that they talk about in the story of Luke chapter 2, verses 40 to 49.
About your father's business.
Yeah, that you're not going to be about your father's business from now on. You're getting off their train. You're not going to be on track. You're not going to be trained. So you get off and you start living a life based upon reacquiring the knowledge of the past. Yeah. And you do that beginning with smell, sight, taste, hearing. And you best do that where you're not being pulled away every minute. And if you can keep a balance between spending most of your time in a natural environment and keeping a big toe dipped in civilization so that you know basically the direction in which they're going today, because it's going to have an impact on you whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
So you may as well know where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to be living their lifestyle. You just want to know where they're at.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in a period of time, for me, I would imagine it took 5 or 6 years on the farm to really become conversant with the real nature. And then you start conversing in the concept that I mentioned before of pictures rather than letters and words.
It seems like you see, like from watching the video, your DVDs, it seemed like you just cut yourself off from people for a little while and then came back.
I was never far away.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the period of my search,
mm-hmm.
I was, in fact, doing public speaking.
Mm.
But the topic of my public speaking was the things people knew about: politics, business, corruption, all of that stuff. And as soon as I started speaking the things I had learned, the audience started to get smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as much me leaving them as they left me. And at first I thought that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that it was a gift.
Yeah, it was a filter.
Yeah. It left me behind with those people whose brain still functioned, being the only ones I could converse with. And therefore, it clarified the concept that, number one, no individual can be perfect, but a group of individuals can put back perfection in humanity. And the question became, what percentage of perfection can an individual have, and therefore how many individuals does it require?
And this concept, you learned from the cell, or you learned it on your
from everything I knew and everybody I had dealt with. There was no single place, and it included conversations with people like the cell and conversations with people who could still understand what I was saying. Plus the conversations that I was having with nature and with my own cells that were basically dormant in me. Everybody's got the majority of them is not involved. They are functioning on something like 3% of their entire knowledge. And it's a matter of digging deeper and deeper to get that ancient history to come forward and to turn what is a recessive knowledge or dormant knowledge into an active knowledge.
Well, you helped me out tonight, because I've for the past, month now, like since I talked to you, I felt like when I was learning, I was observing differently and analyzing differently, and I feel like I was growing, like I was just like evolving and learning.
Well, in the same way you do that for me, because what you are is a memory for me of where I was. and knowing that it's possible not to overstand, but that not being final, that through a journey you can get to the place where you overstand. I'm still working at it because I believe there's a lot of things that I will in fact learn before I leave this place, unless, of course, either side decides that they've had me too long.
I feel like, but then, like, I felt like I was growing, but then since like a month now, I felt like I came like to a halt. Like, I don't know what it was, and then you made me realize like maybe it's just my environment that's just keeping me.
It happens, you know. It's like these rings in fourth dimension that I talk about. That if you start with a singularity, a minute later the ring is bigger. A minute after that, it's bigger still. So at one stage of the game, you kind of say, oops, I don't grasp this bigger ring.
Yeah.
And you stop and you learn how to move to the next ring. And then rings become minutes and hours and days and weeks and months and years. So depending on how fine you want to look at the detail, you're basically growing exponentially on all sides simultaneously. So you're shaping yourself like the barrel where it's expanding and expanding. And then at one stage of the game you will arrive, as the universe we live in has arrived, I suggest, where you're at the center of the barrel. And in order for the barrel to be useful, it has to then start the reverse operation and compress, so that at the end you will have what you had been launched with, plus everything you lived while you were expanding, everything you learned while you were expanding, and everything you learned while you were contracting, getting from youth to old age. And at the end, your seed will be useful for planting into the next dimension.
So what symbol do you think is the best used to explain that? Would it be the double helix? The best explains that.
The double helix is important because it basically shows the symbol. Get yourself an encyclopedia and look for time is the fourth dimension. And if it's a good encyclopedia, they'll have a diagram that looks like a barrel lying on its side. And you can think of the big bang at the right-hand side and the big crunch at the left-hand side, and the transition point is in the middle where the rings are the longest radius or diameter, and then it starts to collapse into the other side, which would be the big crunch. That, to me, is the best way to visualize what we're talking about.
So, for some reason, the idea of this black hole. Now, the black hole, right? What is that? Like I've heard that it sucks in everything, even light. You can't even see in there. Like
black hole is like a bathtub. It'll take whatever it can until it's full, and then return it by spilling over the edges. Even black holes return light. So all of these things are basically too technical for my mind. and I look around and I say, do I need the minutia of detail?
Yeah.
Or should I be looking for
the bigger picture?
Yeah, the bigger picture, a premise at one end and a reasoned thing at the other end,
That's what I look for. I look for the bigger picture, but I come to realize by talking to different people that not everybody's mind works. Some people's minds may work more technical. Some people's minds.
That's why we have different jobs in the world,
Yeah. But all those jobs are all creative.
An engineer is the guy who makes things, or girl, who makes things happen that have been thought out by a thinker, whether it be an architect or an artist or what have you. The thinker sees the bigger picture, the engineer sees the minutia and can put it together.
Yeah.
Neither one of them even thinks for a minute that part of the process is the garbage picker. That if you didn't pick up the garbage at an engineer's place or at an architect's place, the whole thing would collapse. And in our world, the ants are the most important of all living things because they pick up after the messes we make.
I mean, you pick up garbage, when you sculpt, and you take out garbage that the system puts in. That's what the system does. It seems to make a lot of garbage around things.
It makes always everything, because what you do is more trial and error. So the errors have to be cleansed after. And cleaning the garbage is an important task.
Yeah. And
where you put that garbage.
Those ants, too, like, I noticed just from looking at them, you can learn a lot, like how just if you do things daily, like start off.
Much more important to the survival of a planet is the ant than the person who lives there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, these things.
Because what you're basically doing is grinding everything down and putting it back into the pot to start the process of recombination again. And it's much better to have different and new approaches to things than to live with old concepts that don't function.
Yeah, I heard something the other day. It rung true with me. It said that the reason why when people die, right, and they're reborn again, and they're not allowed to remember certain things. And they said,
always remember, Jared, that there are two versions. There's creation's version and creator's version. It's not the activity that creator does that is wrong. It's its timing. So, both approaches are doing the same job. One is within the context of the proper timing.
And
the other one
benefiting it's benefiting a smaller people rather than benefiting the whole.
Absolutely. You got it.
But yeah, what this person said, he said that people are not allowed to remember certain things when they're reborn. It's because so you can retain your individuality.
Well, I agree that you don't have the memory on the day you're reborn. I disagree that you can't get it back.
Yeah.
Because, you know...
remembering what your name was.
In my life, I remember. You know, not everything yet.
Like, I don't think you can remember, like, your name. Huh?
No. That's not important.
I guess that's why I don't remember.
Yeah, you basically remember life almost as what's the biggest problem of the day, and how do we move to the next level. And when you're like me and you think of yourself as you were manufactured as a servant of the Neanderthaler, that's what Cro-Magnon was, and you were doing their bidding. You have that knowledge that you have been used as a robot for 42,000 years or so. Now that you recall all of, or much of this information, how do you turn that into knowledge? And from that knowledge, how do you extract wisdom?
Well, the wisdom I've noticed from my experiences from, like, pain and suffering and trial and error.
That's what being out of time causes. What you're looking at is the exact end result of things being done out of time, out of its proper timing.
Yeah. Like, maybe we weren't ready to be different genders.
We weren't ready to be genders when Creator decided to make it happen.
And that's where
And that was the beginning of the problem. So if you're looking for the root cause of the place in time when we went off kilter, you would have to be looking at a time around 80,000 BC. So about 82,000 years ago. And that's a long time. Think of it as an angle starting from a point and how far you get off from the line in 82,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah, man, they took the wrong...
Yeah, they zigged when they should have zagged.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You gotta have better direction than that to fly in space and arrive at the moon when the moon's at the right place. When you're traveling in space. But for us, that's what has happened.
But see, these Neanderthals, I understand that they have a totally different thinking process than what we do, because they trained us in like a lower type of thinking process, and I guess they still retained the original thinking process, plus their thinking process, how they are made, because they're idiot savant, it's totally different. So, like, they don't, is that something that was learned, I guess, like compassion?
The point to remember, Jared, is that they are irrelevant to the bigger picture.
Oh, yeah.
So now that we are at the point of transition, creation has it in its power to nudge us in the right direction. And that's what we have to be working towards. Not that creation basically has a war and fights with Creator, as they talk about Ragnarok in Norse mythology or end of the world stuff. That's all creator bullshit.
Yeah.
What we have to think about and visualize eventually as a critical mass, putting together the pieces of perfection in human beings together on the same project. What we have to visualize is, at this point of transition, can the control mechanism be taken back by creation, adjusted, nudged, so that it's placed back upon the road it would have taken had it not been thrown off kilter?
But we know.
Got to remember, 82,000 years is a long time, but not a long time in the context of what, 15 billion years or whatever that this Earth has been here. So a little nudge, a little push, not allowing Creator to move into its final stages of induced destruction.
Now, when you said when creation gets involved, it's what people's idea of what it helping or something. It may not be like you
we
said.
Don't have the right words to speak what needs to be spoken. So when we say when creation gets involved, we're only speaking from the point of view of communications within our own languages. We're not basically defining what creation will do any more than we're defining how creation takes back the DNA of the people who went through the experience of observing, analyzing, and concluding, and arrived at the right conclusion, and merged back into creation's singularity, whole, whatever you want to call it. Remembering with creation is not done through the same process as Creator uses, which is to take our DNA and play with it in a laboratory genetically, or allowing it to go down to the main kitchen and be recombined. Creation doesn't deal with that process. It's above and beyond that, and we don't have the words to describe what is going on outside of that fourth dimension, that we are limited in some capacity to visualize. But in the fifth and sixth dimensions beyond that, there would be a much clearer way of defining what needs to be done. And that's why I suggest that no words be used.
It would be like telepathic, like just...
Yeah, you have to kind of know what it is you want to say and visualize it without using words.
And that's, see, the only way we can get past that third dimension is only with ourselves in the spot.
Yeah.
It's not with each other.
No.
You know? Well,
creation must be the decider. And we are the communications of a thought that says, this experiment you began did not, in fact, fail completely. There is a seed bank left that basically justifies the decision of a little tweak, whatever that means in that dimension.
So it's almost you saying this is like, because I've heard this say this, and some like in Masonry, they say they describe it as the world or universal mind, or like it's part, like everything, like creation. It's like this part of a wholeness.
What they are pushing is the concept called one.
Yeah, but there's a reality.
We're not talking about one.
Yeah.
We're talking about together we remember.
Okay.
Okay. It's never a single thing. It is a remembrance of a whole made up of its many parts.
But you ever heard that other thing? It says it's the many within the one.
I never heard it, but I'll accept it. The singularity is a symbol based upon the languaging that we have in this dimension. The reality is that the universe is something that was, is, and will be, and is not a thing. You know, it's not a one. It's a passage from one state to another.
Oh, that's a continual, eternal passage from one state to another.
It never had no beginning and will never have an end, whereas the concept we're talking about of eternity and this third to fourth dimension is not it.
I'm saying, I've heard too, it's not alive, but it's not dead.
Yeah. Well, there is, unfortunately for us, fortunately for our controllers, they didn't give us words to describe clearly between each other what we are meaning. And it must be inferred rather than spoken.
So you're saying it can be felt?
Felt is part of it. All of the senses are part of it. And the realization that communications between different animals does not require a language. Whales don't require a language to speak among each other. They require sounds. And it's something the same way. We require knowledge that there is a wavelength type of thing that will communicate our images to another individual person via the communications network, which I call the Catmobile. The ability of hair to sense the air and then pass on the information to another recipient. That concept, much clearer expanded by someone who would know more than I do, because I speak basically from a not novice but journeyman learning along the way.
I have a feeling like that's what Editorpa into that. Like they have people who specializing in this type of who just study certain, the higher sciences they call it.
No one would basically know everything.
Yeah.
Everyone can know either a minutiae detail in detail or bigger picture with no real getting stuck in the detail. And it's only when you put all the pieces together, the architect and the engineer, down to the person who's going to pick up the scrap on the work site. All of them have a role to play. None is superior to the other, and therefore none should be compensated differently from the other. There is no reason why a person who is responsible for keeping the workshop clean to be living on a compensation package which is a tiny fraction of what the architect or the banker makes. The primary consideration should be that all tasks are equal, and in the end...
To even say all tasks are equal, say all tasks are important.
Well, they are important, but they are also equal, because if one doesn't get done, the other one can't do theirs.
Yeah, it's like a chain.
Ants and bees live in the same world. Yeah. One is generating infrastructure and food, while the other one is picking up. But no one can ever convince anybody in nature that an ant is inferior to a bee. Yeah. They are equals, and nature or creation provides for each of their survival and the exploitation of each of their skill.
Yeah, like I look at stuff like that in nature. Like I think it's amazing how, say, a dead animal is lying in the ground, and over time, it seems like out of nowhere you're seeing little maggots decomposing, other forms of life.
Yeah.
Taking it. It's like, wow. These little things that I find that people pass over, I think lead to bigger, just looking into at least the answers.
And when they're done, you look at the spot where the thing died, whatever it was, and you'll see the shade of the grass has changed in its color.
Yeah.
And it's more alive than it was or is the surrounding area.
Yeah,
it's a really live-looking space in the grass where something had died. Yeah. And one other thing that I noticed is that if you take the thing that died and you bury it somewhere else, the spot where it died still shows the color change because obviously at the moment of death
something is released.
Something was released. But if you look at the place where you put it, at the place where you buried it, at a time much later, usually about 2 or 3 months later, the same thing happens. So it's telling me that the release is not complete at the time of death.
This is something I'm trying to understand. When they bury people, they're actually messing with this process because they're just keeping it all contained in a coffin.
Well, that's basically what confirms the fact that a mummy can be used because life still exists in the dead person if you have the knowledge of how to jumpstart it again. And that it always exists in the concept of DNA. If you find the lock, which is DNA, and you can add the key, which is what will jumpstart this DNA, you can recreate that life again because it has all of the information needed to do that job over and over again. That's the beauty of creation.
It is. When I look at nature, Glenn, like I look at just things like say the term like electricity, and you look at it. I mean, what is it really? I mean, let's look at it in its basic component form. What is it really? We just call it electricity, but that's just that's just something to cover like ignorance. I think it's just something. It's another control mechanism to call it that.
It's electricity, like chemistry, is a fluid that allows energy to pass from one place to another. And a lot of people in the world of aluminum say that aluminum is hardened electricity, or electricity is liquid aluminum. It can flow. The same thing as the moho discontinuity is made up of something hard, basalt, which is solid. But it can be melted and sent to another place as lava.
And water does the same thing too.
Yeah. Water can turn to ice and to steam.
So that's a principle in all these different forms of energy, or I don't know. It's wow.
And we're no different. So not to worry that Creator, having hijacked the world, has the last word. The important thing and the strength one gets when one is a thinker and a philosopher, if he's a thinker who communicates, the joy that one gets is the certainty of knowledge that creation will make the final decision, not Creator. And in that final decision, the people whose brains still function will, no matter what the outcome is for the whole, be exempted from that outcome. And they will remember with creation and move to the next step.
You think that's where they got the concept in religion as, they'll be saved, remembered in the kingdom of God, or what else? Because they do copy everything.
They got that concept from watching creation work.
Yeah, and then they try to make their own version of it.
Yeah. I mean, the story of you live in heaven, you die, and you go to purgatory or hell, and if you go to purgatory, you go back to heaven and then start all over again or whatever. Certainly, heaven couldn't be sitting there doing nothing. So, all of that concept they took from looking at creation's universe, at creation's world, the fact that we decompose, go down past the moho discontinuity, some stays there, some continues the journey right through the what seems to be impenetrable space and returns to the oven of the core of the earth, the kitchen, and recombines and gets sent up again past that mantle and starts the journey over again as something else. All of that story of life came to our controllers from visualizing the world around them. In the end, the distance between the orbiting things in the universe is what creation is looking at, because one thing has to have an impact on another for things to do more than they can do by themselves.
So our controllers, when I look at them, they were socially engineered, totally different. Like, they weren't, it seems like they don't have the ability, unless it's something that's just taught to us, like, of compassion.
Well, it comes back down to, how does all of this begin, George? If a person in their youth feels unappreciated, whether reasoned or unreasoned, it's the end product that's important. If they feel unappreciated, unloved, disrespected for who they are, they begin to lose self-respect. And once a person loses respect in themselves, they are no longer dominated in their actions by reasoning. They are dominated in their actions by a need to get even.
Now, when they felt this was before, they didn't feel like this before contact with grandmother, right?
Not that we know of. You know, some may have felt that whatever process they went in, cryogenic process, was unfair to them, but I don't think that would be a reasoned thought, since they were basically working their way to being geniuses in the thought processes they were in.
Maybe
so it's most likely that it happened as a result of the dividing of the genders. That threw everything off the timing.
Oh. Yeah.
And from that point on,
in a way, they did it to themselves with like how they are.
Don't we always? First lesson learned in the bush.
Yeah.
When you're tugging at a branch and you can't seem to get it to move, follow the branch down and you'll see you're stepping on the other end. Get off of it and then pull. You'll see how easy it is to move.
Yeah, because I think about like this jealousy, feeling of jealousy, like that's something like, because I thought their thinking was totally different. Like, how could they even express that, like jealousy? How could they?
Once you're angry, and once you don't feel any love for yourself, you do things that are not right.
Because we look at, like, when you look at the different animals that you have on your farm, they express almost, because they're not so engineered the same way as we are, obviously, but they express anger, right? They express.
Absolutely.
So
the difference is most animals don't carry grudges.
That's what it is. So the higher the reasoning, the longer the grudge is carried. But, so it's a gift and a curse, having reason. It's what do they call it? That's the fruit. That's the fruit that they talk about also, right?
The reasoning is the end product of man. The reasoning without access to its past, its intuitive knowledge, is the curse. Put the two things back together again,
there you go,
and you start down a new path.
Yeah, I tell you, Glenn, I look at creation, right? The way I look at it like it's a female that I always got to come back to. I always come back to that.
We were all part of female in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's the perfect analogy.
We will, in fact, fix the problem, or this approach to a universe will fail. But those who have learned never have to worry. They don't need the permission of anyone else in order to make the journey and remember with creation. It's only the fact that they have learned and tested and analyzed and concluded this information into knowledge and eventually into wisdom, refined at each place. Once they have achieved that without anybody else's permission, creation absorbs them back. So don't worry about what other people are saying or doing. That's their problem, not yours.
Yeah.
Love yourself first. Begin on the journey of understanding that because other things are different from you, that doesn't make them wrong. Although some things that are out there, even maybe the majority, are wrong, that's not your problem. Your problem is to learn who you were, who you are, and who you will be. Left up to you.
That's like
the
my life.
Decisions are yours. The choices are yours, not theirs.
Wow.
Anyways, bedtime has come and gone.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Talk to you again, George.
All right.
Good night.